Hi, and welcome to English 319 Document Design. I'm Dr. Tirrell, and I'll be your instructor this semester. The purpose of this video is to give you an introduction to the course website, and it contains information about course policies, assignments, and due dates. This is a hybrid section of 319, which means that ordinarily we'll have one course meeting per week inside our classroom. For us, it looks like that's on Thursdays from 12:30 to 1:45 in Bear 202. We'll also have one meeting per week online. Usually what that means is you'll be doing online tasks independently. Occasionally we'll have synchronous or asynchronous interactions at a particular time, but generally you're going to be doing tasks independently during the online period. Because of that, the course website is especially crucial. So after watching this video, make sure you familiarize yourself with it. The link to the course website is at the beginning of this video on that first slide. It also should be in the information below here. I also sent an email to enrolled class members that has a link to the course website. So hopefully you got that. If not, we'll need to figure out where the disconnect was there. But after you watch this video, make sure you look at the course website, and there'll be a task or two to do, which we'll talk about here in just a second. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me switch this over. Okay, so here is the course website homepage. You can see it says home. And on this front page, I will post updates and news that you should know. Right now you can see there's just this one welcome message that tells you a bit about the site and the course and gives them my contact info. So any new updates will be posted to this homepage. You can see there are some consistent site features. Every page is going to have the same interface with the 6 navigation tabs up top here. There may be 1 or 2 more tabs added later, but for now, we have 6 navigation tabs. Over here on the right side, we have a sidebar with course information, reminds you of our meeting time and place, and then also instructor information. So it's got my name and then also my contact info, which is probably more important. Got my email address here, my office, which is Morton Hall, 161, so it's not in the same building as our classroom. My office hours are Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 4. You can also schedule an appointment with me if that doesn't work, or we can do office hour communication through email or video chat or whatever works for you. Okay, so that's that. The next page on the website we're going to look at is the syllabus here. Now that is important, and you do need to make sure you read this and become familiar with it, because we're just going to do an overview. We're not going to pour over the policies right now. I am going to expect you to read through this and know the policies. You will also be signing a course contract that indicates as much, that you've read these policies, that you're going to abide by them, and that kind of thing. There is also, you'll notice, a couple of addendums here where you can opt out of particular policies. The first is that by default, students have access to course grades by use of a randomly generated ID number. That's normally how grades are shared. If you want to opt out of that, you can. You just have to initial here on your contract and let me know, and then we'll work out some other channel to get you your grades. Also, by default, student work can be used anonymously for teaching and research purposes. So anything you turn in to me, by default, you're granting me permission to use anonymously for teaching, such as using it as an example in a future semester, or research purposes, where generally it's aggregated with everyone else's to show particular trends. You can opt out of that if you'd like by initialing there. But the main point of the contract is to indicate that you know the policies. You have to abide by them anyway, but this assures me that you have actually read through them. So as I mentioned, we're just going to do an overview here. The course overview provides a general statement of what's going to happen in the course. We are focusing on document design, which is both a practical skill, but also a theoretical area of expertise as well, or an area of exploration, let's say. This is a hybrid course, as you know, and we've talked about what that means. Another aspect of that is that you will be doing a lot more independent work. You will be more responsible for handling yourself, for making sure you're on top of your own schedule, and that you're more invested in your own success. Just because I'm only going to be seeing you in person 15 times, you know. The rest of our meetings will take place online, outside of class. So you need to make sure you're on top of things yourself. The calendars we'll look at in a bit will really help you with this, because it spells out exactly what's going on at any given time. But you are ultimately the final authority in terms of your own success. Another thing to mention about this course is we are going to be focusing theoretically on sort of the affordances and philosophies that are embedded in tools. We are going to be looking at using different software tools. And a lot of times we view tools as sort of neutral and objective, that they're just something you use to accomplish a task, you know, like a hammer. But of course, even something as seemingly inevitable like a hammer has a philosophy, has affordances built into it. So we're going to be examining that and the implications of those different philosophies and orientations. In particular, we're going to be looking at the difference between commercial and open source software. And we don't want to fall into sort of a simple binary of good and bad guys or something like that, but we do want to look at the different kinds of ethics that underpin those models and how those play out tangibly. So the course learning outcomes, this gives a terse statement of overall what we're going to be doing and what we believe students should extract from this experience. Required materials, this is a bit you should be aware of. We do not have a course text that you need to purchase. There will be readings, articles that will be shared on the website as PDFs. We also have a course handbook that covers terms and concepts that we're going to be using. So those are our primary reading materials. So you don't have to buy a book. The trade-off, however, is you may have to get a subscription to the Adobe Creative Cloud Suite. Basically, Adobe creates the industry standard products that we're going to be using for document design, such as Photoshop and InDesign and those kinds of things. They've recently moved to a subscription model rather than a purchase model, so you can't just buy their software, you're essentially renting it. There are student rates, that's the good news. And so ultimately it ends up not being, it ends up being essentially the cost of a book if you look at student licensing. You're not going to be required to get that, however. What I'm going to do is give you tasks, and we're going to examine and get exposure to the Adobe suite, but then also open source equivalents such as GIMP, Inkscape, and Scribus. I'm not going to require you to use any particular tool. I'm going to give you tasks. I'm going to give you interaction with software, and then you're going to be left to make your own decisions about what tools you want to use. Because the point of this class ultimately isn't tool training, right? It's to get fundamental concepts and an understanding of rhetoric, how to analyze a situation and then respond appropriately through whatever tool is required for the job. Okay, so just be aware of that. We don't have a book to purchase, but you may opt to get an Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. You won't be required to, but it may help your design process. So course policies, technology expectations, obviously because this is a hybrid, technology is a major component of it, so you have to be able to interact with the course website. You have to have access to design software, which we just addressed. Another big thing is that computer problems are not a valid excuse for incomplete coursework. At this point, I mean, you guys have grown up with computers. Even if you didn't always have one, just the zeitgeist has included computers for probably your whole lives, depending if you're coming from you know, straight out of high school into college, or if you were a returning student or whatever. Regardless, computers have been part of our culture for decades now. So you just can't say, well, my computer blitzed. That happens to everyone. You have to expect it. So you have to mitigate that. And the way you do that is redundant backup, right? We sometimes call that data hygiene. What that means is when you're working on stuff, save it to multiple places. You have access to a shared drive just by being a student. I think yours is called Timmy, maybe. Mine is called Sammy, I believe. But every time you log into a computer here on campus, and you can do it at home as well, you just have to mount the drive, you have a network drive that the university gives you. You can back up data there, and then you can get it anytime you log in. You can also use something like a little USB flash drive or something like that. The point is you need to back up your work. Digital technology is going to fail you. You know, sometime you're going to be working and an application will freeze or your power will blitz. You guys are probably, you know, juniors, seniors, something like that. You know that around the end of the semester, around finals, for some reason, the power blitzes here almost every semester. You have to be prepared for that. And the way to do that is redundant backup. Regarding personal tech devices in the classroom, you can bring and use whatever you want. I mean, it'd be weird for me to say, you know, you can't use tech in the class since this is a tech-influenced class and it is a hybrid. Also, just the environment we live in is tech-infused. Really, you need to get prepared for a work and life environment where tech is just there. And part of that is figuring out when you can devote attention to tech and when you can't, right? You've probably been in a class situation where you've been just too distracted by tech. You know, you've been staring down at your phone. We can always tell when you're doing that, when people are staring at their crotch. We know what you're doing. And, you know, you're just not engaged in the class, and that's injured you in some way. You didn't learn as well as you might have. Your grade or whatever didn't pan out the way you'd hoped. We all have to learn how to mitigate that. So you can use your tech in class as long as you don't disrupt anyone else or disrupt my ability to teach. It's fine. The thing of it is, though, because this is a hybrid and we meet so few times, every face-to-face class period, we're going to be doing face-to-face activities. I mean, that's the point. We schedule stuff that you have to be face-to-face for in those face-to-face class meetings. So it will behoove you to engage with those. Ultimately, though, you're responsible for managing your tech use. As long as it doesn't bother anybody else or me, then I will make some limitations. Some other things, availability of material online. We might be posting some stuff to this website, and if we do, be aware that it's out on the open web. I mean, this is not a Blackboard shell or anything like that. It's not an intranet site. This is out there on the internet. So anything we post here is accessible. Anything we post also, you'll have the ability to you know, use a different username or something like that so it doesn't get automatically associated with you. Excuse me. Also, because anything we post out there or anything that's shared online, I have the right to use for teaching or research purposes. You can opt out of that, though, remember. Production, this is the other thing. Since we don't buy a course textbook, most of the stuff we'll be handing in will be electronic, but particularly the last project, we will be producing some tangible items. That can be stuff like students have made t-shirts or tote bags or coasters or large format color posters. The point is, some of those things, you know, we're not going to have the facilities on campus to create those, right? I mean, potentially, you know, we do have a 3D printer on campus, but you guys may not have access to that. The point is, you may need to find third-party places to do some of your production work. That means production is the actual tangible creation of something. So, you know, if you're making a tote bag, you're probably going to have to go to a place like FedEx Office, which used to be called Kinko's. They're not called that anymore. So you may have to spend a little bit of money there. It's not going to be a lot, but that's sort of the trade-off. We don't have to buy a book, but we do have these other material resource costs. Attendance and punctuality, you're a student, so you know your whole thing is being in class on time. That's what students do. That's what being a student is. So that's the expectation. There is no separate attendance component of the grade, but any work you miss, you can't make up. This is a professional writing class, so we stick to professional expectations. That means if you're not there and you don't turn something in, you know, you miss the deadline. If there's an unusual situation where you know you're not going to be in class, you can just contact me ahead of time, and generally it's not a big deal. But if you start missing more class because of it, then it is a big deal, because ultimately you're not there. You're missing the learning, right? Think of it just like any other subject. If you were a doctor and you weren't there the whole time they talked about, you know, the heart, no one would trust you, right? If you missed the material, you missed the material. So for that reason, any student who misses more than 3 classes without special clearance from me, you'll fail automatically. That's 3 weeks. I mean, it sounds like not that much time, but it's a lot of time. We only have 15 meetings. So 3 is a large chunk of that, right? It's 20%. So you'll fail the course automatically. That's that. Late work, as I said, it's not accepted under normal circumstances because this is a professional writing class. We go by professional guidelines. Statement on academic integrity. This handles cheating and plagiarism. That's generally not a big concern in this class because we're going to be doing things that are so individuated to you, and we're all going to be doing them kind of step by step. It doesn't happen much. Also, I don't think you guys are cheaters. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because I don't think you're cheaters. Very few students actually are. Just be aware that the penalties for any kind of academic misconduct are very severe. What happens is you go up before the student conduct board, and that's made up of mostly other students, and they will throw the book at you because when someone else is getting away with something, it devalues the work they've put in. So the point is, it's never worth it to violate academic conduct. I mean, even if you have to fail a class, you can just retake the class. You get 5 retakes here. But cheating that'll follow you. That's a big deal. But as I said, you guys aren't cheaters, so it's not going to happen. I'm not worried about it. Statement on services for students with disabilities. We, of course, will make every accommodation to suit disabilities. The thing of it is, though, you do have to go through the Disability Resource Center first. I can't make any ad hoc accommodations. That's actually a legal issue. You have to go through the Disability Resource Center. Statement regarding violence and harassment. UNCW is a zero tolerance campus. If you're in a situation that you feel is violent or harassing and it's immediate, just call 911. If it's not immediate or less pressing, you can contact CARE. The phone number is listed here. There are also online resources that are linked. Something to be aware of about this, though, is that now all campus employees, including me, are legally obligated to report any violent or situation of harassment to the dean of students. It's a legal obligation. So anything you tell me, even in confidence, I do have to report. There are 3 places that are still confidential sources on campus. They are CARE, the Counseling Center, and the Abrams Student Health Center. Every other employee is legally obligated to report any harassing situation on or off campus. When I say that, that's not to discourage you from talking to me. I'm always there to listen to those kinds of issues, and I do deal with them. I mean, it's not it's certainly within something you can talk to your professor about. I welcome that. Just be aware that it will have to go through the proper channels if you talk to me. If for whatever reason you don't want to do that, there are 3 confidential resources on campus. Statement on religious observance. There's a state law that you may be aware of that grants students a certain number of religious absences. The thing of it is, you do have to inform both me and the registrar the first week of class. So if this pertains to you, you know your religious schedule, if you know if you're going to be out. So you just have to take care of it in the first week of class. And then lastly, grading issues. As I mentioned, by default, you have access to your grades through use of a randomly determined numerical ID. You can opt out of that policy if you would like. The grade components, and we're going to look at these in a second here, but the grade is based on just these things. This is it. There's no participation. There's no attendance. It's these things. We've got engagement assignments. That's 10% of the overall grade. Design activities and reading responses. Those are each 15%. And then 2 major projects that consist of multiple sub-projects. And they are each 30% of the course grade. So that's the Publix project and the personal brand project. We're going to look at those later in the semester as we go. But basically, it's, there's kind of 2 halves of the semester, 1 project per half, and each one has multiple parts. Related to that, all major drafts, we're going to be doing them as we go. So you're not just going to get the instructions and I'm going to send you out and say, good luck and cut you adrift here. we're going to be doing drafting, revision. I'm going to know what you're going to be doing at sort of every stage. So don't worry about that aspect. I'm going to be giving you feedback as we draft and revise. I'm not going to give you quite as much feedback on a graded assignment, because at that point, all it would be is me explaining why you got a particular grade, and that's not really useful. The point of feedback is to help your design process. So once something's graded, it's just, well, here's why you got this. I'm happy to talk to you about that, but I'm by default, I generally don't provide those comments. Sometimes it's just sort of like piling on, I mean, the research is kind of demonstrated. It's not all that useful, but I am happy to talk to you at any stage, including after it's been graded. Lastly, we do use the plus-minus system in here. Sometimes students aren't too crazy about that. The reason why I do it is letter grades, you know this, I mean, you've all been students. Letter grades are exceedingly coarse, right? If you get a B in something, what does that really say? I mean, it says almost nothing. It says something, but very little. Using plus minus gives us a little bit more of a fine-grained understanding of what happened in that class, right? There is a big difference between someone who gets a B plus and someone who gets a B minus. Not in terms of the actual person, but in terms of what happened in that class. Grades are not an evaluation of you as a person. You know that by now in your academic career. All it means is this is what happened to occur during a few weeks that happen to represent some very small aspects of a subject. These are not personal evaluations by any stretch of the imagination. And as I said, even if you fail, you can make up 5 classes here. Don't worry about it. Well, worry about it, but don't let it crush your life. It's fixable. So that's the gist. I do use plus minus. I don't use it to injure anybody. It's just a little bit more fine-grained. So that's the syllabus, as I mentioned. Do read through this because you are going to be signing a course contract indicating that you're familiar with these policies and you have to abide by them anyway. So that's that. The assignments tab. The syllabus you're probably only going to check at the beginning and then every so often to get clarity on a policy. Assignments you'll be looking at probably as we go. As I mentioned, there are 2 main projects and then kind of 3 assignments or assignment categories that have to do with things that are important but aren't projects. They're things that we do to learn and to keep the class moving appropriately and to keep the conversation flowing. So engagement assignments, those are little assignments such as in-class activities, out-of-class short assignments, I think drafts, turning in your course contract, that's an engagement assignment. They're just small things that we do to make sure the class is all on the same metaphorical page. Mostly they're just worth 1 or 2 points each, and then the grade is just cumulative. It's how many you got versus how many were possible, and that's where that percentage comes from. I believe it's 10, right? 10% of the overall grade. Yeah. These other 2 categories, we've got design activities and reading responses. Design activities, they will ask you to look at existing documents that you'll find, and you're going to be analyzing them and working with them with regard to design principles. These are things that are covered in our online handbook here. And they're also things you'll do a little bit more outside research about, because our handbook deals with design aspects that are part of the industry. So there's going to be other resources that tell you more about these things. Design activities do that. They ask you to find existing texts and then work with them according to these design concepts and design principles. Reading responses. These are short written statements that respond to assigned, generally, textual reading material. There'll be things about theory and practice. We're going to be reading articles. This lets me know that you're engaging with them appropriately. And then we've got the 2 main projects. You can look at these on your own. I'm just going to pull one up here. The Publics project is the first main project, and we'll start that right at the beginning of class, actually. You can kind of see how this breaks down into categories. I provide a summary that gives an overview of what's going to happen. Deliverables are the things you're actually going to turn in. You can see we've got 8 of them, and it gives you the percentage of this project grade that each one is worth. And then we've got resources here, linked resources that will be useful for this project. Some of them we're going to address in class, some of them we may not. So that's the structure of how projects break down. So that's assignments. We've got the calendar. That's a very important one. We're going to return to this here in just a second because this is where you're going to spend the most time. It breaks down everything that we're doing, so you're going to be consulting this frequently. I mean, it's sort of how the course moves. These other two tabs, handbook, we kind of got a brief look at earlier. This provides information about different design concepts. We're going to be using these throughout the semester in projects and design activities. So you can see how these are broken down into different sort of chapters or categories, however you want to look at that, areas. And then it provides brief information about each. Links just takes you off site to, this is Pinboard. It's a social bookmarking site. These are links that I've compiled that are relevant to this course and different design concepts. So that's those two. The calendar, as I mentioned, that's the big one. You're going to be spending most of your time interacting with the calendar. And you can kind of see how this works. We've got differently colored rows. Those indicate in-class periods and out-of-class periods. So for us, our in-class is Thursdays, and that's white. Our out-of-class, those are gray, and those are Tuesdays. So you can see at a glance, you know, what each one is. We've got 3 columns here. The date, so it breaks down every day. What is due on that day, and then the agenda for that period. So, for example, our first class period is the 20th. That's a Thursday because it's a white row. We actually do have a couple of things due on that first period. It's watching this course introduction video, which you are doing now. And then you're going to be submitting the personal introductions post, and we'll look at that in a second. Then on that day, you can see what we're going to do. We're going to introduce the course. We're going to complete our course contracts, and we're going to introduce the first project, the Publix project. Then on Tuesday, which will be a out-of-class online period, you're going to be submitting the book jacket research activity. And on that day, you're going to be beginning design activity 1. Then the next time I see you guys on Thursday, the 27th, that design activity should be submitted. It should be in by the time class meets. And then on that Thursday, we're going to discuss it and begin our book jacket design plan. That's part of the Publix project. So that's how this breaks down. It spells out everything that we're going to be doing, and there are links. Right now, there aren't links beyond the first couple of weeks because I add those as we go. But everything that you're going to do is just going to be spelled out there. You can click the link and go to it, and that's how you'll keep up with the course. So that's how that works. As I mentioned, we do have something due on that first day. It's the personal introductions post. I want to just take a quick look at that because this form structure, this is a Google form. We're going to be using this quite a bit, so I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with it. You can see how it works. It asks for your name, and then it has some questions here. A couple of sentences about yourself, a couple of sentences about document design and what you think it is, a couple of sentences about your expectations for what you want to get out of this class, and then a couple of sentences about your comfort level with the hybrid nature of this course. You'll notice that if I try to submit it without these required things, it won't let you do that. When you're filling these in, I really encourage you to do this in a separate application and then just copy and paste, right? So instead of writing directly into this blank, I would pull up something like Microsoft Word, right, my content, and then I'd save this as I go. I'd save it to my shared drive, someplace that's backed up. And then I would just copy and paste my responses over. The reason why is, as I mentioned, digital technology is going to fail you. So what happens if, you spend a lot of time filling these in and then you click submit and a blank page comes up and you've lost everything because your internet connection dropped or the power blitz is halfway through. If you saved everything in another program or on another file, you can just copy and paste it, no big deal. If you've written it directly in here and something happens, it's just lost, This is just a practice of data hygiene. Do it somewhere secure and then copy and paste it over. Okay, so that'll be the first thing we do is that personal introductions post. That I do use that information. It's not just busy work, but it does also show me that everyone is able to use that submission structure, because we do use that fairly often. Okay, so that's the course in a nutshell. As I mentioned, excuse me, the course website. There's more to the course. I would like you to go ahead and familiarize yourself with the different components of the website. As I mentioned, we'll probably be adding another couple of sections as we go, but I'll talk about those when it happens. So we've got, the links that are actually off-site. We've got the handbook. You want to look through that. The calendar, that's going to be the biggie. Information about your assignments, the policies. You do need to read through that syllabus, because you're going to be abiding by those guidelines, and you're going to be signing a contract to that effect. And then the homepage, where news and important updates will be posted. So that's that. Let me just turn this off here. There we go. Hi. So that's the course website. Again, welcome to the course. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited to talk about the kind of issues we're going to be dealing with in terms of affordances and the ethical implications of different tools. Because this is a practical class in terms of we are going to be designing documents from conception to finished product. But there is more to doing that than just sort of rote pumping stuff out. A machine could do that. I mean, they're doing it. What we bring to the table is an awareness of how to analyze situations, how to break things down rhetorically and respond properly. What are the ethical considerations of everything we're doing here? What larger philosophical implications are at stake? So those are some of the things we're going to be addressing. This is a hybrid section, as I mentioned, so there's a little bit more of an onus on you to be personally invested in the class, to take responsibility for your own success, to accomplish tasks without someone prodding you or prompting you or whatever. But I expect that if you took this class, you're already capable at doing that. So that's the gist of it. I hope you find this class to be challenging and rewarding. As I mentioned, I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. Other than that, I will see you in class. And if you have any questions at any point, feel free to contact me through email, office hours. We can do video chat, whatever works for you. All right. I will see you in class.